you are from Russia, and now you live in Sacramento, California. Please talk about your amazing career.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Imoke, for inviting me to talk about that. Yes, the career is interesting, or has been interesting. So I was born and grew up in a country which doesn't exist anymore, right? It's what I tell my students all the time, in the Soviet Union. And I was, again, maybe that is more surprising for you, Imoke, even we know each other for a while. My first career was teaching physics and astronomy. I wanted to work with kids, and I got my education. I started to work at school, and it's when I developed a huge interest in family therapy, because I observed children, I worked with children who had troubles at home, whose parents were divorcing, and it impacted their well-being, their studies. So I became interested in family therapy, and that it was like later, like in the 1990s. I got my degree in counseling, family counseling, as the second degree at Moscow State University. And then I came to the States in 1998 to get my PhD in family therapy, because family therapy wasn't very well developed in Russia at that time. It's how I came to the States. Again, I tell my students that the reason to come to the States was family therapy. I was very interested in family therapy. I got my PhD at Fuller Theological Seminary. It has a psychology school, and it has a family therapy program. Then I worked at the Ohio State University for 5 years, and it's when I met Rashmi Gangama, and I was teaching family therapy there. So then I got my position here at California School of Professional Psychology in California, marriage and family therapy program, couple and family therapy program. That is my career.
Thank you. Yeah.
My journey.
Yeah. And how did you come into contact with contextual therapy? And who helped you to understand the contextual approach? Yeah.
So when I came to the States and started to study family therapy, I was introduced, like I had an advanced family therapy class there, and we studied all models. So that was a very unique opportunity for me to compare and contrast all models at once. So I studied them all together, and I was immediately drawn to two intergenerational models. Bowen, my dissertation was on Bowen family therapy and contextual therapy. So there was no like particular person who taught me contextual therapy. I started to study it from books. I read all writings of Nagy. Should I said Nagy or Nagy? I know that in Hungary. Nagy, yes. Here in the United States, his name pronounced Nagy. But yeah, I know that in Hungarian it's Nagy. Yeah. So Yeah, it was from the books, from his writings. But then I attended many, not many actually, conferences when some people presented, like Terry Hargrave, his development of contextual therapy. So mostly from reading. Oh, and I watched all available recordings of NAD. It was done through American Association of Marriage and Family Therapy. So there were his presentations there, interview with him, session demonstrations. So I purchased all of them and was watching them all the time, trying to understand the theory. Then later, I took a couple of virtual seminars with Play and Family Therapy Center in Pennsylvania. But it was organized by Dottie Huggins Klein, and she invited many great speakers on contextual therapy, like Catherine Dakaman-Nad, Janet Hibbs, and others. So I met some of them later. So I got some teaching, but not like personal one. One teaching from his colleagues or his students. So another very important way for learning contextual therapy for me actually was my teaching. So as I said, I like my professional career started at the Ohio State University, and I was teaching family therapy there for the doctoral students, and I was trying to teach contextual therapy there. And who said it? I think Seneca, philosopher, said, while we teach, we learn. Dialogues with the students, their questions, their thoughts on contextual therapy was a huge learning experience for me. And many of their ideas, like do more research on contextual theory, more presentations on that, actually came from those students. And one of them is Rashmi, you are going to have an interview with as well. Okay, did I answer your question?
Yeah. Okay. And the next one, we have given lectures together several times, and our topic was historical, political, transgeneration trauma. And Tatjana, I've never asked you, why are you interested in this topic?
Yes, and we met around that topic, right? I remember Denver when you came to me after my presentation on this topic. And I think we share this interest because the Eastern European countries share a lot of history, right? Massive historical events and man-made traumas of the region since the beginning of the 20th century. So my interest is because of my family, personal life, but I think that this story is shared by many other men and women and people from my generation. So in my family, in my family, my mother's and father's sides, they both were impacted by tragedies which happened in Russia, in the Soviet Union. And I saw that trauma actually passing from my grandparents to my parents and to me, and I saw it. I saw it in my life. Yeah, I can talk a little bit more about that. For example, my grandmother, my mom's mother, she was married 3 times, and we would think that, okay, what happened to her, right? Her first husband was killed during World War I. So they were married very young. He was taken to the war and he didn't come back. So she married, and it was very difficult for a woman to survive alone. So she married the second time, and her second husband was killed during the Civil War. The son and her husband. So she married the third time, and her husband, my grandfather, was injured during World War II, and he wasn't able to function full capacity. So she was a strong woman who survived. I even it's difficult for me to even imagine how she was surviving. So she wasn't very warm, of course, to her children. Of course, she wasn't very warm. She was trying to provide food and shelter and support them. My mom was an adolescent when World War II started, and she was taken from her home to Moscow to work on defenses. So when she was 14, she left her family and needed to live independently. And those events were external events. It wasn't like her choice. She was just taken. And she also needed to survive and to be a strong woman, right? So when I grew up, my mom loved me tremendously, but she never expressed it emotionally, never hugged me, and never said I love you till she became older. And I grew up in a different time, and I wasn't able to understand it. And she was pretty self-centered, and that so when I was growing up, I was curious, like why my mom is this way. And I had many friends who had the same experience with their mothers as well. And only later on, especially with contextual therapy, I was able to understand what's going on. That how big traumas can impact families and relationship between parents and children. And so that is a part of my story. Also, another grandfather who survived World War II, the whole war, he came to back home to his wife with 3 children at this time, without arm, because he was injured. And we knew, he was a hero, we knew that, but he never talked about his experience. As little children, we always were asking him, oh, grandpa, tell us. And we watched movies, and movies were, not horrible at that time about the war. And he was saying, you do not need to know that. He's never talked about his experience during the war and what he survived. So I, again, from very early years, I saw that silence exists in families who experience horrible traumas. but also those traumas impact relationship with the family. So there is a lot of personal connection for that. And when I was when I became a mom, I noticed that I did some things which were not explainable just by, by the context where I work. We lived in pretty like peaceful time, right? But I had a tendency say no, like if my daughter would say, "Mom, like, can I do that?" I had the automatic response, "No, you cannot do that." And then I started to think, like, why can't you do that? Like, why no? And then I reflected on that impulse, and it's what I was taught when I was growing up, that the world outside is dangerous. You cannot trust anybody. I remember my parents saying, "Tatjana, please make sure that you do not share any personal information, even with your best friends. You cannot trust anyone, or you shouldn't joke." Again, we were growing up with some political jokes. No, do not make those jokes. It's dangerous. But it seemed not so dangerous in my environment. But my parents carried it from their childhood. So I was reflecting on my own parenting. So I'm very interested in parenting and how our parenting is related to previous generation traumas. So did I answer well enough?
Yes, yes.
Okay. I can talk more about it, and but I think it's enough for today, right? And in Russia, it's I think it's a very difficult situation with historical or socio-political trauma, because if we look at last 100 something years, there were waves and waves of tragic events, and they were overlapping and creating very complex interactions. So I think it's impossible to say, okay, that one particular experience impacted, families. And definitely we cannot say that it's a linear process that, okay, if your parents were traumatized in this way, you will inherit the same trauma. I think it's a very, very complex process, and there are forces of resilience, like new meanings. So it's not linear for sure, but there are some shared processes, I think, which happen in families and parent-child relationship. Also, I don't know about Hungary, whether you had this experience. I know that you had many other experiences like Russia didn't have, or at least regions when I grew up. But in many historical events in our country, it's very difficult to have an easily identifiable enemy and perpetrator, right? Because there were internal revolutions, civil war, repression. So it's not like an external enemy, only when external enemy came, right? There were a lot of internal turbulences, and some families were split and became on opposite sides of, red and white, or other conflicts. Or sometimes they were on like perpetrators, then they became repressed, and again it's constant movement. And some of those events became very acknowledged in our current society, and some events only had partial acknowledgement, like World War II, victory in World War II became a part of national identity and pride. At the same time, the repressions, the purge, still create ambivalence in the society. So very complex situation. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. It was really interesting to hear you, and thanks that you are so open, that you shared your own experiences and your own family. I think is a big thing. And the next question that regard this transgeneration traumas, that what kind of philosophical legacies did you have to process?
Yeah, so according to the contextual therapy, right, the third generation has a particular responsibility to process what happened to first and second generation. And what I appreciate very much about the contextual theory and Nad's thinking that, again, it's not a linear process, that just, trauma is carried in the same way through all generations. And again, as I said, I even saw it in my family that the first generation didn't talk about it because they needed to survive. And sometimes it was too horrific, too close to remember, like to recall it again. The second generation may develop some, and maybe parentified children and develop some type of also destructive entitlement, right? And the third generation is supposed to constructively process it. So my work in this, I think that it's talking about it, bringing it up to our attention, especially in family therapy work. Here, I work with some immigrant families, and I see it during my clinical work. And very often people do not understand where a particular issue came from. As I said, like my restrictive parenting style, like saying no, was so weird to me, but and I didn't understand like why I'm doing it. I have no reasons for that. And I think that sensitizing other clinicians to impacts of historical socio-political traumas on current, like the third generation, is a big task for me in terms of legacy and thinking about future generations, and doing some academic work. It's what I'm doing. I've presented several times on those topics in Russia, in Moscow and Vladivostok. It's the Russian Far East. So I work with my colleagues there on those topics. We do a little bit of research on that. And I think that is my legacy.
Thank you very much. It was very interesting to hear that. I think in countries like Russia and Hungary, maybe it was also difficult to speak about.
Our countries said like share those experiences of the war, but also the totalitarian regimes, right? And then their fall and how people adjusted to that. And it's also not an easy process. Yeah, so we share that. Though, you know, for each country, even like for parts of country, for different groups in the same country, right? It's a very different, not very different, but different experience, because it's, it's in the context of their group history, it's in the context of their family history. So a lot of similarities, but unique situations. Yeah, and I think that, our generation needs to process it and reflect on that. And probably it's our task for future generations. Probably, again, in the contextual therapy, as Moti and I represented on that, we need to know the past for the sake of the future. So that is also a very important point of contextual therapy, that we are not just, recalling those traumas for the sake of the past. We are doing it for future generations, for our children, whether we have children or not.
And I was very happy that America told me that you are interested in political issues, also in political circumstances. And that's why this next following question came to my mind, because I am very interested in this, because my family is tragedy and traumas. That in our common history, nations and religious and ethnical groups have been causing a countless destruction to each other. And every family on this planet has its own wounds and sufferings because of this. Just to mention the recent conflicts, like in the world, or Jews and Palestine and French and German, and now the Russian and Ukraine. And of course, we in Hungarian, we also made a lot of sufferings to our neighbors. And even I am like a grandfather of a Second World War son who was in the Don River, maybe fought with your grandfather. So we are sitting now in a different topic. And I'm just curious that so it is very difficult for all of us to forgive and step forward, because we have so many wounds received from the other nations. And I'm just curious that what do you think about using the contextual approach in healing of relationships between not only families, but in nations or ethnical group or religious groups? Have you experienced such a healing or something?
The contextual therapy helps me to understand other groups, and so it's more personal perspective. I mean, when I see those conflicts or hear about those conflicts or meet people, I'm thinking about multi-directed partiality, right? And destructive entitlement, and legacy as well. So if, let's say, one group experience horrible genocide or collective trauma, it's, the next generations feel that ethical responsibility that they need maybe to carry that memory and to protect their own group, and often it leads to more violence and suffering, right? So for me, the contextual theory helps to understand the situation, and whether we can apply the theory developed for families to the larger political context, it's a question for me. I think that we need to have more dialogues about that and think together what we can use from this theory and how we can again heal our wounds and provide more peaceful future for our children, right? How we not to carry destructive entitlement piece, but in the contextual theory, Nigel wrote that fairness is subjective thing, and I think that in many political situations, justice is not such a subjective thing. I think this is a big difference. And maybe, again, we need to reflect more on the theory and develop it more, or think about how it can be applicable to the larger societal context. But I will be very cautious. But I think that there are several ideas which can be very, very useful in the larger context. Again, I say like multi-directed partiality, destructive entitlement, accountability. So how we can understand but keep people accountable for their actions as well, right? That is a challenge in therapy. Okay, I exonerate, I understand why you did like a horrible thing. You had your reasons for that. But how can you be accountable? Because there are consequences of actions according to the contextual therapy. And again, it seems like a very trivial thing for us, but articulating it, saying that our actions have consequences. And if we want to build trustworthy, again, it's another concept which sits with me very, very strongly and resonates with me very strongly, that any trust is built on trustworthiness. It's not just my internal problem or individual problem that, I have paranoid features, I'm too suspicious. It's not because of it can be part of my personality, yes, but usually it's based on my experience with other people when other people were not trustworthy. So when we have those conflicts between groups, it's much more complicated than like the family situation, and we have political, economical interests. We shouldn't forget about colonialism, right? That there are other interests and motives in some people's behaviors. Not only thinking about other human beings as human beings. It's what contextual therapy says, that relationship, it's I and thou relationship, right? Other people are not objects, but sometimes people are treated as objects for some economical interests. So when we understand, acknowledge what happened, what actions need to be taken to build trustworthiness. So each group, I think, needs to think about their accountability in the situation and take some action to remediate it, to build more trustworthiness in those groups. That would be, my ideas, what we need to remember or take from the contextual therapy into those conflicts and resolutions and healing. And I guess it's nothing super insightful. That it's a complex process, right?
Thank you very much. It was really interesting. And did you have any, or have you had any clients that he suffered like traumas, political traumas, and you were?
Yes, and I work with, as I said, with many immigrants, not only from the former Soviet Union, but from Mexico, for example, from other countries, and immigration itself is a big traumatic experience for most of people. Of course, again, different contexts, but it's some type of stressful event, if not very traumatic. And I'm working with adolescents, like second or 1.5 generation of immigrants. And again, I see how family relationship reflect the past experience. I do teach family therapy at the California School of Professional Psychology at Alliant. And when I talk about ideas of contextual therapy, so many students, especially from minority groups, or those groups which experienced oppression, immigrants, they resonate, like they say, I like this approach. It explains so much. And they share with me their experiences of their transgenerational transmission. So so I work with that in my clinical practice, in my teaching practicum with the students. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
You are the chair of the scientific program, scientific committee of the conference, and this conference is important for you.
Very
Right?
much. Yes, very much. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how would you encourage people to come to the conference?
Mm-hmm. Conferences in general. I think that if anyone wants to get a sense or vibe of the field at the moment, right now, here and now, that should be through conferences, because all publications, they take like a year or 2 years to get published, at least, right? So whatever we read is at least 2-3 years old, even if it was published yesterday. But at the conference, you see people with their current ideas and dialogues about those ideas. So innovative, so new ideas come up, you make connections. So that is a very rich experience at professional and personal level. And Imoki, I mentioned that you and we met at another conference, and it was in CFAR conference, right? And you came up with Monica brought you right to that conference, and we established our relationship. They last like years. I hope this will last like till our death, right? And it's like long life relationship, personal and professional. We like when I was presenting then, I think it was just one presentation on transgenerational trauma in the national context or in country context beyond the United States. And when you came, said, I'm very interested in this. I think it's so important that, it creates that it confirms your ideas, but also it brings new ideas and new connections, new things we can do together. And today we are talking because we met at the conference. So that is about the conferences altogether. So it's a opportunity to develop new ideas, to be creative. It's a lot about uncertainty and discoveries and serendipities. You do not know what will happen, what you will take from that conference. Specifically on contextual therapy, it's not the most popular and promoted approach. We all know that. And I know that there are clinicians and professionals who do contextual therapy, who develop contextual therapy around the world. And I think it's extremely important that we can get together, see each other, and have dialogues about further development of contextual therapy. And we have, again, it was planned to have it every other year. Again, it's a rare opportunity. It doesn't happen like every year. So I think that it's, if you have an interest in contextual therapy, if you want to learn more or to share your discoveries, your experience, then, okay, I do not like words must, you must come to this conference.
No, people.
I know that it's money is involved, right? I know that for many of students here, they said, I wish I could go. And it's expensive. But talking about Budapest and Hungary, the ticket can be expensive, but being in Budapest can be not so expensive. And enjoying the city with not so much money is possible. People can share the room, they can share an apartment, and it won't cost much. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, people must come.
Yes,
People must come. Yes.
Yeah, I always use a tentative language, like likely, like I do not like must and have to, but yes, if you have any interest in contextual therapy, then yeah, you must come.
Thank you.
Hopefully, hopefully, this whole COVID situation will be past, and we can sit together and hug together and cry together without any masks and these kind of things.
Yeah.
Yes, I really hope that we will be able to do that. But I would be satisfied even sitting in masks, if it's needed. But yeah, but to see people, everyone now who has been working long distance and via Zoom. I know my students constantly talk about it. Yes, we get all information and we see faces, but presence of human, like physical presence, is a very different thing. And I know that when again, it seems like, okay, I have the same head, right? Whether I'm sitting in my office, the same heart, but or when I'm with other people. But from my previous experience from previous conferences, when we sit, or meetings, gathering together, when we sit and just talk unstructured, new ideas appear, and you do not know where they come from. By the way, now I'm recalling, it's a little bit of deviation, that conditions for creativity, and there was a study in publication, I won't recall which one, that creativity needs unstructured environment. So that time when we are not brainstorming intentionally, but we just sit, chat, have our coffee, or if you do it, a drink, and I think great drinks in Budapest. There are great drinks in Budapest. So whatever you eat and drink when you share food with other people, after the conference, when you are not preoccupied with, I need to produce something, I need to come up with new ideas. It's when new ideas come. And that was a study. So I know that you, Imoke, as the organizational chair, right? You were thinking about after the presentation events. And when I was younger and more goal-oriented, I thought, okay, when I go to conference, I will go to presentations, I will do my work. And that fun things, okay, I need to continue to work, I need to grade papers or, respond to emails. That is secondary, it's not important. Now, and especially after reading that research, I think, okay, that second part is super important for your work. It's not a linear production of ideas and producing your ideas. It's those semi-structured, low pressure human interactions when new ideas come up. So that after the conference program, I think it's critical for its success. And I can talk about, and probably, Imoke, you wanted to ask me about Budapest and what I think about Budapest, right? So I think that Budapest is a perfect place for that. I've been to Budapest actually 3 times, and I love the city. And I was there never during the fall. So I was during summer, during winter, and during spring. So I really want to see it in the fall. And I can imagine that in October, it would be gorgeous foliage, on the hills, around the river and bridges. So yeah, it's a beautiful city in the geographical center of Europe. If people do not think about that, it's in the center of its geographical center, and it's a crossroad of so many cultures. And I love art, music there very much. People, I didn't have. Okay, I probably would never speak any Hungarian. I know that it's such a difficult language, but I experienced only good vibes with other people. What also I share with Imoke constantly, and I don't know, maybe you perceive it as I don't know, as a Russian would perceive, you're talking about matryoshka or balalaika, something like that. But I love Hungarian food, especially turostashka. Turostashka. I don't do Hungarian, and I know what it means. I mean, translation, it's like cottage cheese bag or purse, right? And they're delicious. And I didn't know the word for that. So when I was there for the first time, so I went to a bakery and said, I want this, I want this. I do not know what it is. And I was describing it in my English. And then a seller there said, turostashka. I said, yes, give it to me. So and then I saw that it's everywhere. So it's amazing food. Again, very little thing that when I was growing up. So now it's a full circle, right? When I was a schoolgirl in Russia, in the Soviet Union, we had so-called Hungarian cheesecakes. That was those baked goods, actually, which were turostashkas. And I loved them. They were my favorite. So, you know, it's childhood memories from the Soviet Union, which brought me, to Budapest to appreciate your cuisine. Do you like turostashkas? No?
I like.
Okay, good.
I do. Now we know what we have to prepare when you are coming, or what we.
Yes, it's it's like a breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I will be satisfied with that. But I know that there are other like delicious foods and drinks there. And go
yeah.
ahead.
I promise you to have turostashka in the conference.
During coffee breaks, yes. So yeah, please forgive my, preoccupation with that. I will be waiting for those breaks, like when I will. And coffee is very nice. But also, I discovered that I think during my only second or even third visit to Budapest, local bath. And I went to several of them. I don't know, during COVID, whether they will be, or after COVID, whether they will be opened or not. But they're amazing. I use several of them. And I think, again, healing your body, soul and mind, at one place, I think that is an amazing combination about Budapest. And they were not very expensive. And from you, Imoke, I've heard that you still will be able to secure that hotel, right? That the conference will be at
it's the same place. So GLEBOVA Hotel. Yes.
Yeah, that is again, I think, such a special place in Budapest, right? And it's beautiful. It has a great view. I think I had like coffee on that porch, and you see the bridge and the river. It's a beautiful view and beautiful rooms. So the environment should be very.
And the hotels, GLEBOVA Hotels age is the same, like Vöszörményi. So
yes.
101 years old.
Yes, a historical place. Yes, very special place. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you very much, Tatjana. It was really nice to meet you. Hopefully we can meet also personally soon.
Yes, I hope, and I'm looking forward to that. And I really hope that will happen. So it's a big event for many people who share the contextual therapy ideas, and I think we can contribute a lot together. We need to get together.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for this opportunity. I'm very happy to see you and to share my thoughts, to have a dialogue with you. Yeah.
Thank you, Tatjana.
Thank you very much, Tatjana.